Whether at home or work, life is about relationships. Welcome to Small Change, Big Dividends with your host, Branch Isole. Small Change, Big Dividends shares steps, tools, and tips for personal career and spiritual growth. So please welcome the host of Small Change, Big Dividends, Branch Isole.
Throughout history, humans have experienced, profited from, and suffered through an ever-evolving and increasingly complex transition from one era to the next. From pre-civilized survivalists to advanced scoundrels within the rise and fall of empires, religious, cultural, political, and economic cohabitating influences have flourished throughout the ages, all preparing a path for our technological information age. Each era participated in and contributed to a continued race toward the 21st century, with its reconstituted clashes between societies, groups, and tribes. Having come full circle, again, life offers every avenue of belief or behavior that a mind can imagine. Prepping for our soon-to-be welcome age of artificial intelligence, even more propagandized distrust is guaranteed. Within our lifetime, truth will be thrown to the ground and trampled into the dust once and for all. Coming to you from deep in the forest near the banks of the Washita River, you're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Small Changes, Big Dividend is a show where your questions are part of the program. So if you have a question, you can call during our live stream to our toll-free number, 1-866-451-1451. Or you can email your question anytime during the week to my website, branchisole.com. Thanks for joining me again today. Each week I share Mana'o with listeners from around the world. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we talk about personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. Today, I'm going to share some small changes that can pay big dividends in your relationships and in your life. Because whether at home or work, life is about relationships, but it's healthy relationships that encourage and embrace growth. Do you dread going to bed at night, knowing when you wake, you'll be faced with a bombardment of information, coupled with questions, doubts, apprehensions about what you can or can't believe to be true? Do you wonder how that barrage of data may affect you and your future? Do you wake up wishing you could pull the covers back over your head? Is your day compounded by stress-filled demands that never seem to subside, leaving you to wonder what you can or can't believe or trust to be true? Or how this information that you're relying on may alter your income, your relationships, even your life. You see, today many people live in a 24/7 plugged-in life where time is pretty much spoken for before you even get out of bed in the morning. And even with the convenience and technology demands on our time and energies that are fully committed, it never seems to end. Does your day proceed as if you're caged or confined, trapped on a spinning wheel, or navigating a maze of demands and requests, while trying to keep your head above water, pay bills, and somehow have time for yourself and friends or family? You hear a favorite tune from a time when your life and your energy were yours, and suddenly you realize that song you're humming along with is from 15, 20, 30 years ago. Why? Because 24 hours in a modern day life is often fleeting, to say the least. You see, in most relationships or circumstances, there is my truth, your truth, and the truth. Or perhaps better said, my perception of truth, your perception of truth, and actual truth. And within the vortex of truth, we each occupy two realms of existence, the physical and the spiritual. And in each one, truth is part keel and part rudder on the small craft of our existence. Much like the keel on any vessel, its presence often goes unnoticed. And similar to a ship's keel, truth can provide structure and balance. Like a rudder, truth provides steering and direction capabilities. Many go through life believing they have a firm goal in mind, but in life's daily reality, most of us are really like catchers behind home plate, trying to stop fastballs or chase elusive curveballs that life is throwing. Each becomes a test, a challenge, a temptation thrown, while we're engaged in getting through our daily activities or trying to get ahead within our lives and relationships. Many feel as if they're on a treadmill, or worse, in a cage, seemingly going nowhere, while grappling with stress, struggle, pressure, and conflict of each day's interactions. You see, one of life's challenges is to make us believe that stress, struggle, and conflict are too great for us to face, to endure, or to avoid, making us victims, not conquerors of life. And yet, throughout our daily walk, we see, hear, and meet people who are conquerors, people who have overcome hardships or avoided adversity for many of the same issues or problems that seem to trap or corner us. Now, don't get me wrong, life is not easy. It was never designed to be. But if you heard a success story or a rags to riches tale, you probably noticed that before the success part arrived, there were periods of times, stress, struggle, pressure, and conflict. Now, realizing this, we come to recognize that the purpose and challenge of growth opportunities is to better understand how to bloom within our original dream, the one we've been trying to manifest against all odds. You see, every living thing, plant, animal, human, throughout history has experienced or dealt with stress, struggle, and conflict. And like every animal species, our focus is generally on self, peppered with interactions and opportunities for gain. As I said, life is not easy. If it were, what would be the point of the living experience? Without tests, temptations, or challenges, how would we know or recognize growth, change, or success? Philosophers throughout the ages devoted time and energy to how the power of adversity affects us and our relationships. Buddha taught about suffering and its purpose and noted that overcoming suffering is a strength building exercise that can give rise to energy to help propel us forward to our goals, our dreams, our ambitions. His point was to teach how to reduce challenges, tests, and temptations by making them opportunities. Just as the guiding hand of a competent and confident skipper who knows and understands his or her vessel, as well as his or her strengths and limits, cruising his sailboat into the breeze often offers opportunities for the excess wind collected in those sails simply to spill out, if not needed for propulsion. And when we confidently know our strengths, while at the same time acknowledging areas that need work or attention, we can start to establish that balance we need for greater success in life as we become more competent, more competitive, more complete, and more productive. You see, truth holds both a promise and a peril in our current age of information technology. Living has always been about growth. Growth is about change. And change is about becoming more of who we can be. Not only who we are now, but who we can and want to be in the future if we're willing to step on the foot of path for truth. With truth's presence as part of our life, we can now face each new day with confidence because we now know, realize, and understand that stress, struggle, and conflict will not deter us from our goals, the ones we've decided upon. But how will we know? And more importantly, where does this level of winning confidence come from? In a single word, truth. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, recognized that suffering is the result of misunderstanding truth. Truth about the world, truth about ourselves, and truth about our place in the world. You see, when we leave Life 101 to live a life of 101A, we become capable of seeing life's potential setbacks as the propellant we need to reach each new goal and each new level of success. Why is this? Well, we each come into the world literally as malleable babes, knowing nothing, ready to be manipulated and molded by all we see, all we know, all we believe, through our world and its ways. In Life 101, we are in the world and we are of the world. Why? Because our societies raise us to believe what we are told while hiding and camouflaging truth. Our challenge and struggle is to discover truth for ourselves and to risk making truth our new path. See, some are blinded by the truth. Most have a veil over their eyes obscuring truth's presence. And many are ignorant or oblivious to truth, while having little or no desire to discover, discern, or embrace truth. But when we find the courage to remove the veil, the light of truth becomes evident and shines. Having gained sight by recognizing truth going forward, we now see the world, our world, with eyes wide open. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little more about truth, what it is, and how to make it part of our life. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Today we're talking about truth and the veil that many have covering their eyes, obscuring that truth. So what is it that allows us to peek behind the veil? And more importantly, what are the benefits of recognizing truth in one's life and relationships? Once we're aware of truth's reality, the world's lies, fabrications, deceit, and deceptions become clearly evident. And as we begin to see and recognize truth, we now automatically start to see and recognize untruths as the clear and present danger they represent to us, to our relationships, and to our lives. With knowledge of truth, the lines are no longer blurred, and we now see and recognize truth's value for us, and more importantly, for those we care about. If we now choose to ignore truth, then suffer from the consequences of our actions, those consequences are ours to own by and through each decision we make going forward. You see, when we know truth, we come to automatically recognize suffering born of and held in abeyance for us by falsehoods. More importantly, we begin to see that we can now know this ahead of time, before we choose, before we decide, before we respond in any given situation. And that's the real power of truth, knowing ahead of time negative consequences. Truth alerts us to the potential negative outcomes before we decide what to do, before we choose which way to go or what path to follow. When we recognize truth in our life, our times of wondering if a decision or choice will work out or not are over. Why? Because doubt becomes a thing of the past. Knowing and responding truthfully by, in, and of its very nature reduces stress, struggle, and conflict. Again, why? Because negative energy produces suffering. And that suffering will no longer be a part of your life's space or activities. You see, there's an interesting object lesson about negative energy or bad mojo. It must be somewhere always. You see, the universe is always in balance. Therefore, positive and negative energy always exist in equilibrium. If you refuse to allow negative energy into your life or into your relationships, it will go somewhere else. There are plenty of people in everyone's life who dwell and wallow in negative energy. Why? They love the drama. They love the trauma and the attention, even if or when it causes pain. Well, how can this be? Simply said, they become comfortably numb in uncomfortable misery. If you consciously refuse to allow negative energy people into your life or into your relationships, they and their negative energy attitude will leave you alone. Why? Because truth is the last place they want to be. Truth is the last thing they want to hear. Because truth's self-indictment is the last element they're willing to face. As long as people refuse to acknowledge truth, they have all the excuses they need to blame others or to deny personal responsibility for their failings, their choices, and their inappropriate behavior. They stay as far away as possible from accepting responsibility because that's where their comfort zone is. They prefer to rationalize away not being responsible for their words or deeds. So, what's the benefit to you? The benefit to you is by allowing truth to supplant their presence in your life, they will no longer be a drain on your life. They'll not consume your time and energy any further. They'll not drag you down in their ever cascading spiral of self-pity. You see, your daily stress, struggle, and conflict can be reduced as much as you want it to be, all the way to zero if you so choose. You see, we only have control over two responses, those that we make or those that we allow. And once you choose to align yourself with truth, you'll start to recognize truth in every part of your life. You'll see it expressed in every situation throughout your daily activities. How? How can this be, you say? Well, truth transcends all life everywhere. Truth ties beginning to end. Now the question becomes, will you accept the challenge of truth's presence in your life and relationships or not? You see, the fact that we are born into, live in, and function in a physical world naturally influences all we know and all we experience. Our lives become what we embrace. So as we age, realizing that there must be, or there might be, or there could be more to know or believe, the aspects behind the veil that have been hidden begin to come into the light. Now, call it religion, call it philosophy, call it karma, call it spirituality or mysticism, call it by any number of different names or labels. When we become aware that there's also a realm outside of, but perhaps potentially influencing our daily interactions in the physical world, many start to see there exist for each of us two complementary and sometimes conflicted parts of duality, the physical us and the spiritual us. But with maturity, we begin to understand that balance we seek is actually between the physical and the spiritual parts of whom we are and who we are willing to become. But why isn't this more evident? Why does it take so long for us to wonder about or ask about its presence? Well, like yin and yang, the duality of life is always there, always together, and yet always separate. But why is this separation and what's it all about? Well, we come to sense innately the power of truth is there, but we don't always know why, and more importantly, we don't always know what to do with it once we realize it exists. Well, today I'm going to answer these questions, starting with why are we focused on the physical reality? Because if it's more about just that, just being here physically, what is it about? You see, many people think or believe there is, or at least there is the possibility that life is more than what we experience every day. More than just our physical bodies in this physical, material time and place. And to this end, chapter 4, verse 24 in the book of John informs us that God is spirit. Scripture also declares that God is the creator of the universe, and therefore, as part of his creation, we also are spirit. It's the essence of our originality. Science has long acknowledged that each of us is an electrically charged unit of energy, part of the cosmological makeup within the universe. Now, for our discussion, I'll label this electrical charged unit as our soul. And as part of God's creativeness, when we are born, we're a combination of mind, body, soul, and spirit. A body with an analytical brain and mind, possessing a conscience and subconscious awareness. Additionally, part of our combined existence in this universal electrical energy, our soul, which houses our individual spiritual essence of origin, our origination from God, because our spirit is of and from God, our spirit has a natural, innate capacity to understand right and wrong. And it's this awareness that's reinforced initially by our daily experiences as children and later reinforced as we grow in our particular society with its own legal system of rules and regulations. You see, right and wrong is the functional foundation concept of humanity's traditions as practiced within every society's laws, rules, and legal codes. And this is and has been throughout history and across the planet how right and wrong is understood and applied. About age 2, we start to understand the conceptual implications of right and wrong, expressed and learned in a single word: no. The concept no is then reinforced consistently and constantly as we grow. It's learned from and within our families, our neighborhoods, our schools, and our communities. And while being consistently guided and applied to by each society's rules and laws, we quickly learn to assess the consequences of right and wrong, meted out as reward or punishment. And as we grow, we begin to connect the dots between right and wrong, the concept, and reward and punishment, the action of that concept. And we start to see every choice or decision in terms of what's in it for me, a reward or a punishment. Our spirit of origination is there within us, but it's only partially active. It's only working at 20% capacity, 10% love, 10% truth. But why these two? Well, again, Scripture tells us God is truth and love. John 4:24, Romans 8:39. In our spirit of originality, we are also totally truth and love. We are of God's Spirit. But when we're born into this physical world, we take on the world's character and nature as well. So our spirit of origination, our spirit of originality becomes diluted, if you will. We are now 10% truth, 10% love, 80% humanity. Our spiritual essence is now only partially active. So it only participates in right or wrong, reward or punishment, daily situations. And it's only partially active because our spiritual cognition is overwhelmed by our physical existence. The world and the world's ways are what we know, what we learn, what we embrace. And the world is where we live and interact. So as a result, the farther along life's path we travel with a partially active spirit, the more we approach every interaction, every choice, every decision, thinking, my life is all about me. And we come to believe that our choices and decisions are all about reward or punishment. You see, if you've ever made a decision where the outcome left you embarrassed, ashamed, full of guilt, full of remorse, or full of regret, that's your partial spirit being active, because it only responds to right or wrong, reward or punishment situations. And it only interacts with your conscious mind through the emotions of guilt, shame, embarrassment, remorse, or regret. And it's these emotional responses that your spirit is recognizing. Your spirit is recognizing how God would have had you respond differently than the way you did. And perhaps you've seen this comically portrayed as a little angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other, both vying for your attention. And as you try to decide how to respond in a particular situation, the angel is your partially active spirit represented by the angel, and the little devil represents your carnal desires, tempting with pleasures and rewards of the world's ways. Remember, we are all prodigal children. We're all little Pinocchios, desiring to make our mark as we venture out into the world, gushing with its glitz and glamour. And that's our challenge. We're going to take our second break. When we come back, we're going to talk about stress, struggle, and pressure in your daily life. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Our daily life, with its stress, struggles, and pressures, is conflicted often between our limited spiritual awareness, and our massive, self-focused, purpose-driven carnal desires. Desires that are grounded in the pursuit of worldly success, coupled with our self-perception of how we appear in the eyes of others. So what's missing? Well, what's missing is the reactivation of our spirit of origination, our spirit of originality. This is life's missing link. You see, the job of our spirit is to remind us through emotional cognition that every situation's negative consequences are possible. The missing link in us, as a new creation through spirit activation that sparks to life a spirit now in full capacity with the power that it had before we were born. With our new spiritual activation, we now understand we can replace our old pattern behaviors of worldly desires as our first option. You see, God's Holy Spirit sparks to fullness a new recognition that truth is everywhere in our life, but most importantly, in ourselves and in our relationships. Recognizing truth in our world, we now also automatically recognize the lies, fabrications, falsehoods, deceit, and deceptions in our world and in our sphere of influence with family, friends, co-workers. With 100% reactivated spirit, whenever we choose or decide how we will respond to a question, a situation, or a circumstance, it's now the power of God's spiritual strength within us that reveals to our conscience the moral and or ethical path in every pending choice. Why? Because we now see clearly to recognize the moral and ethical consequences in each decision. It's not just about reward or punishment couched in right versus wrong. It's no longer about what's in it for me. It's now about how will this choice, this decision, affect those I care about, my family, my neighborhood, my coworkers, my community, my world. Now, please note, I didn't say the world, I said my world. How will my decisions or choices affect those in my world, those that I care about and are responsible for? You see, our new sparked to life spirit now resurfaces with a moral compass and ethical responses. This is our missing link to God. And it's this essence of grounded spiritual strength between each of us and God, the moral and ethical responses that are the missing link. By recognizing truth in your life, you can now identify the ramifications or outcomes in every choice that will highlight for you the benefits or the adversities in every situation you encounter. Not only for you as an individual, but more importantly, what those outcomes of your decisions now hold for those you care about. Why? Because your responses are now rooted in moral and ethical understanding. Okay, you say, Branch, but how do we know what moral and ethical responses are? Well, again, God's character and nature are truth and love, and his character and nature in action are morals and ethics. When we respond morally and ethically, we come from our highest self because we now innately choose truth and love. We automatically know what Jesus' examples would be because his spirit, the spirit of universal conscious truth and love, is now active within us. Now, we still have free will to choose how we will respond. And we can choose to respond as a new creation in Christ, or we can continue using our old pattern responses and our old pattern behaviors. But with a 100% activated spirit, we now know how to choose and live morally and ethically with the people, circumstances, and situations in our life. It's our new relationship with God that's revealed through our moral and ethical responses. Because it's no longer about me and what I want, it's now about the moral and ethical me and what I want for the people who are important to me in my life. Now, we now realize that every choice, every decision, large or small, with immediate or long-term ramifications in each choice, is for both us and for those who we care about, who we're responsible for, who we declare that we are loved by and loved for, and their importance to us. People often ask me, how will I know what a moral or ethical response is? Well, you'll know because your now reactivated 100% operational spirit becomes your guide. First, by helping you to recall previous old pattern responses and old pattern behaviors that produced negative fallout. And second, by revealing the moral and ethical response that you can now choose to make. How does this happen? Well, you'll no longer be experiencing unpleasant emotions or buyer's remorse filled with doubts and questions that once dominated your old pattern life. Now the only question is, will you respond morally and ethically or not? We're going to take our final break. When we come back, I have a couple of thoughts from something in the news today. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Today I shared the power of truth. But why is cognition of truth more important today than ever before? In 5 days, on January 20th, Donald Trump will take back the reins of power over the greatest economy and military on the planet. And the world will never be the same. Bible prophecy is unfolding as promised before your very eyes. Join me next week as I explain God's end times and last days timetable. As the lawless one, the son of perdition, steps onto the world stage once again, a stage that Satan has been preparing for 2,000 years. Right before I went on the show today, I saw a news bulletin that the Israeli-Hamas conflict war is in its final or pre-final treaty stages. Well, you have just seen prophecy revealed in your hearing and in your sight. The Psalm 83 prophecy describing the conflict between Israel and her enemies, the Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi conflict, is coming to its end, supposedly. And we'll see how long it takes for them to hash through all of the things that everybody wants out of this treaty. But you're seeing the prophecy of Psalm 83 completed in your sight and in your hearing. So is this the end? No, not at all. Remember, there are 3 prophecies that God promised the world would witness before the tribulation period comes. The first was the reconstitution of Israel as a nation state that took place May 14th, 1948. The second would be the Psalm 83 prophecy, the conflicts that led up to this current Israeli Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi conflict. That's the second one. And the third one that the entire world will witness before the tribulation starts is the Ezekiel War, the next war between Israel and her enemies, led by Turkey, Russia, and Iran. That war will be in our future in the latter days, the last 10 days of April 2027. Thanks for joining me today. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we discuss personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, will you please share it with them? And if today's show has been interesting for you, please give us a rating and review. To know more about my work, you can visit my website, branchisole.com, or my YouTube channel, Branch Isole. Today's show has been sponsored by Crystal Creek Farm. If you have a business, a product, or a service you'd like to share with the world on Small Changes, Big Dividends, just send your inquiry to the website. You've been watching, listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Braid Media, TV and Talk Global Network. Until next week, keep growing and be in the world, not of the world.
What if you could discover a deeper spiritual truth, free from the constraints of organized religion? Introducing the Spirituality Series, a 5-book collection that offers a fresh, honest approach to spirituality. These stories are not about religion, they're about truth. For seekers, searchers, and those who have fallen away from traditional beliefs, this series is a guide to spiritual relationships that transcend doctrine. Explore 5 powerful themes: meaning, purpose, expression, fellowship, and choice. Each book reveals new ways to understand and embrace spirituality in daily life, without the influence of mainstream religion. Whether you're searching for deeper meaning or simply curious about the role of spirit in your life, these books will guide you to a fulfilling spiritual path, one that is grounded in the teachings of Jesus Christ, but free from the limitations of any specific faith. Experience spiritual growth through personal stories, practical insights, and poetic reflections designed to awaken your soul. Start your journey today with the Spirituality Series. Free from religion, full of truth. Get your copy today.
This has been Small Change, Big Dividends. When you're ready for healthier, more successful relationships at home or work, Small Change, Big Dividends is your show. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.